We'd like to welcome Tom Kitchen, class of 1967. John Corey, class of 1957. Al Vincevich, class of 1958.
They know to come through here.
Don Hendershot, class of 1958.
I had to have somebody here for me.
Mr. Ed Romeyer. Mr. John Abramitis. Mr. Jeff Saunders, 1967 and 1970. Mr. Ed Sutton, class of 65-66.
Yeah, that's me. I'm that old.
They were state champs in 1967. Next up, we'd like to welcome Mr. Bob Sheldon, class of 1961. Mr. Paul O'Hay, class of 1962. Mr. Fred Brown, class of 1961. Mr. Larry Wise, class of 1963. Mr. John Foley, class of 1962. Mr. Mike Doherty, class of 1960. Mr. Neil Chamberlain, class of 1961. They were champions 1960, 1961, 1962, and 1964. Next, we'd like to welcome Mr. Bill Hibbler, class of 1955. Mr. Stan Gibbs, class of 1955. Mr. George Armour, class of 1955. Mr. Jerry DeMeo, class of 1955. Mr. Bill Sargent, class of 1957. Mr. Alonzo Carpenter, class of 1955. Mr. Donald Milbury. Mr. Edward Rich Christoph, class of 1956. We're champions 1955, 1956, 1957, 1958, and 1959. Next, we'd like to welcome Mr. Andrew Hibbler, class of 1953. Mr. Bob Best, class of 1953. Mr. Al DeMeo, class of 1951. Mr. Dale Young, class of 1951. Mr. Richard Tyson, class of 1953. Mr. Roy Sargent, class of 1953. Mr. Tony Sabinski, class of 1954. Mr. Richard Pfeiffer, class of 54. Standing in will be son Todd Pfeiffer, class of 1980. And champions 1951 and 1954. Next up, we'd like to welcome Mr. Frank Vincevich, class of 1949. Mr. Jack Bond, class of 1948. Mr. Charles Toulouse. Mr. Jim Cochran, class of 1947. Standing in for Jim is his grandson, Christian Cochran, number 68, and he will be the class of 2015. They were champions 1946.
Yeah, right up there in Boots. Remember that game up there we played
We'd also like to welcome Mr. Harold Minetti, class of 1961. Dale Young, 1951. Mr. John Corley, 1957. Mr. Bill Norton, 1945. Mr. Rhoda Russ, class of 1961. We'd like to welcome Senior Michael Rossi, longtime coach at Alumni High School. Mr. Len Mooney, class of 1929 and 1933, standing in as his great-grandnephew, Joe Cook. We'd like to mention that Mr. Frank Mitzovich was an All-American in South Carolina. We'd like everybody to give these alumni a very big round of applause.
I'm sorry.